Sanje Shindo Mede Dogo Nanda Shiva Sanje Chetan Saje Chanam Tagi Shuje Jebe Samanje Sanje Chetan Saje Chanam Chanjo Tagi Shuje Jebe Samanje Bala Penche Sanje Chetan Saje Chanam 라면 매장 보다 계산하고 주위에서 같이 가는 선제 선물 시 디다 제전된 담배 주는 견nen데 제시 너무 이게 너무 내생 게 처음부터 너가 근제 저게 제가 봐 탐색에 또 다게 줘대 또 가서 어떤 거라도 비게다 다저 어떤 거라도 이게 상말로 대반이네 대바이에 받으면 또 유용 그랬어.
So, generally, all of us have an incredible amount of faith in the, Shakyamuni Buddhas.
원인자는 다 뒤니기 때문에 이 랍자스네 장랑도 랍자들에 랍자스한 것들에 나랑도 매봐 주던 것이랬어.
And also, we have a full conviction in his advice or the teachings which were taught by him.
달라서 상모도 양솔라미야 그에는 가서 뒤지 가서 라고 세나 되는 이게 시투야게 네 튕긴 상도 요랬어.
So, also, if one were to engage into the practices of this advice or this profound teaching, then one is actually fully qualified to do that.
단계 진비게 망쳐 버려 잘 되어스.
And one is mostly free from all these negative conditions or the unfavorable conditions.
다딘게 진디 인비게 마음도 친 튕기는 용으로 치는 거는 비게 담발랍지 양년 치고 삼나요. 그거는 시투야 말이스.
But in other hand, if the unfavorable conditions are more, and then the favorable conditions or the positive conditions are fewer or less, then even if one has the wish to engage into the practices of the Buddha's teaching, one cannot do so.
나 튕기지 비가 맞아서 그냥 밤만 용담되는 비게 딱 해서 맞으면 다 두고스.
So, before finishing or before generating the positive conditions and before, encountering or before, meeting with the negative conditions, then one should, try to take the advantage of these conditions.
이나야 나도 참말로 지게 되게 바로 건전해지 당나라부터 내려지 난 처를 비게 지금 많이 금요 저게 참말로 하다 비게 때때 지이고 그랬어.
So generally all of us engage into different levels of practice, like some maybe meditating on different deities, some reciting different mantras, and some doing different recitation and so forth. Just depending on the one's own potential and capacity, we all engage in that sort of practices.
다 뒤에는 비게 가서로 다지 간저 된데 처음에 내가 상황이 좀 마다나 망사의 텐데 있긴서리야. 내가 아닌가 요랬어.
So, even that, then, if you do not fully contemplate upon the, the preciousness of the perfect human rebirth, and then, the death and impermanence, then, there's a danger of all this practice becoming, conditioned to fulfill this very life's wishes and this very life's purposes.
시베 가는 거 알려내 단다 아우도 시면 용 상상 상마직 단진디 가도 인형을 안 줄이야 하는 지금 고치 아마 가도 인형고 단지고 말안 줄이야 나 시각 배 단다 시대가 돈에 맞대서 배 시면 용 상배 아니 고 티베 시도 되요 단진.
The reason is because we have this clinging or the grasping in the sense of permanent, that even if one is about to die, like if one is going to die next minute, we still have that clinging in the mind that I'm not going to die. That kind of concept is strongly, dominating within us.
단지도 여바든 단지도 여바 티수도 많아서 샌들도 야가 소문당하는 맛도 지금 진심 편자를 야는 배 상마지 추원을 갈라가고 요랬어.
So long as we have this kind of concept or this kind of attitude, grasping at the permanent, then it will only plan to have a favorable things or pleasurable things for this life. We will not consider about our future lifetimes to come. And on top of that, then we have all the these delusions and dominated by the delusions.
And
so, with these two negative forces, this grasping at the sense of permanent, and then the delusion, then we do all these things which we're not supposed to be doing or which we're not supposed to do. So if one is, engaging into the wrong direction or the mistaken direction, by the force of these two, thoughts, then that means one, take the purpose of taking perfect human rebirth is becoming essenceless or becomes useless. That one does not becomes like one of the proper human members.
So
if one is unable to show, or if one is unable to take the advantage of the proper human rebirth, then that would be the same as the animal's life or the animal's rebirth. We have this clinging or the grasping at the sense of permanent, and on top of that, then we have this spontaneous, self-grasping attitude is always there. So, so long as we have this self-grasping attitude, then, we always mistake, we always cling that, we were totally mistaken with the suffering being a pleasure. So if one is able to counteract, the self-grasping attitude, then one will not develop sense of clinging or attachment towards the pleasures of the cycle of existence or whatever is happening in the cycle of existence. The reason why most of our attitude or the mind is not directed towards the spiritual path or towards the practice is because the attitude or our mind is the force to engage into the worldly activities much more powerful, much more dominating than that of the spiritual side.
플러슈체 티졸이 안 돌아와 되니 그 가서 대제주상 되니 그게 가서로 지면서로 안 돌아가 가고요.
So then because of that, then we always have full concern about oneself alone. Like I may feeling hungry or cold or thirsty or so forth. We always concern about one's own food, clothes, and shelter, and so on. And then because of this attitude, or disturbed by this attitude, then it is very hard for our mind to be directed towards the spiritual path, which is helpful for the future lifetimes to come. So if one doesn't want to use one's body, speech, and mind for the worldly activities or for the worldly way of living, then one should consider and check or investigate carefully in this point. But although we like pretending to be engaging into the practice of spiritual path, which is meant to be the beneficial work for the future lifetimes, but it is very hard for us to engage into the pure way of practice. Although like to have these three activities purely is very hard, such as motivation at the beginning or the preliminary level at the beginning, and then the actual practice and the concluding practice. We never actually complete these three levels of practice in proper and pure way. So although it is very short time that one is engaging in any form of practice, one must engage in pure form and more proper way. So if one does properly and purely very short moment in one day and continue in similar way, then by accumulating in this kind of way, then one have the possibility later on to also engage in longer duration of practice in proper and pure manner. So, on the other hand, if one doesn't, engage into the practice properly and pure way, then, no matter how long one engage into the practice, it's just matter of waste of time. And then later on, if one is really investigating whether one has practiced properly or not, then there you find that one didn't do good, and there's also a sense of regret is there. So two worries may develop there. So even if it is very limited, very short time, then one shouldn't let go under one's practice under the influence of the delusions. So if one's practice is under the influence of attachment and anger, then no matter even if one practices entire one's life, that doesn't maybe benefits for the future lifetimes to come at all. So that whatever amount of practice that one carrying on in daily life, then the objective should be the highest one. One shouldn't merely attach towards the attainment of the higher rebirth in the future, and also should not attached towards one's own self-liberation. Instead, seek or instead dedicate towards the attainment of the definite goodness, or that is the highest state of the enlightenment. Because within the definite goodness, then there you have two levels. The individual liberations, or the oneself is the liberation only for oneself, and then the liberation for others. That is the highest enlightenment states. Please develop the motivation, for the sake of all sentient being, or for the sake of removing all sentient being suffering. I must have to attain the Buddhahood. For that sake, I'm going to listen to the teaching, even if it is very short period. So cultivate the motivation with the altruistic attitude. So, the topic here is the part of the, Lamrim, the part of the continuation of the Lamrim teachings. So this the topic here is that I haven't given the topic in the past. The main topic is how to train or the nature of the special insight into emptiness. So actually, when you talk about the calm abiding or the shamatha, that is the single-pointed consciousness or the single-pointed mind. So, when you talk about single-pointed mind or the single-pointed consciousness, it's just having the single-pointed mind, not to forget the object of the observation alone is not sufficient. So, whatever object one is focusing on without forgetting the object, and without forgetting, and be always mindful with that object. And then ascertain or hold the object in quite a tight way, in more or less quite tight way. So with these three qualities, or with these three qualifications, then it is called a single-pointed mind or single-pointed concentration. So with these three qualifications, the single-pointed concentration with three qualifications, if one is able to focus on the object for the period of 4 or 5 hours without forgetting, always mindful with the object, then that marks that one has obtained the shamatha or the single-pointed concentration. If you miss one of the qualifications or the qualities, then that does not, even if one tries to meditate, that does not become the practice of shamatha or the calm abiding of the mind. Because because the reason is the mindfulness, which is always conscious about the object, prevents the excitement. So excitement, can be also refers to the excitement doesn't usually arise from the virtuous object. It usually arises from the object of attachment and hatred. So, without forgetting the object of observation, one should always be conscious about the object. So, even the mindfulness is not forgetting and always holding the object, but if the mind is wavering here and there, then that that makes you to arise the dullness or the mental thinkings. Then that also makes for the subtle mental thinkings to arise. So if one has the quite a strong sense of observing the object or holding the object more like tight way, then that also prevents the excitement or the thinking or the mental wandering to arise. So like the ascertainment of the object, if it is not clear, then is like for example, usually one is quite away with one's parents, and suddenly one hears that one's parents are passed away. At that point, one has very strong ascertainment or very strong sense of feeling about the object, the parents, isn't it? So suddenly when one hears this kind of information that one's relative or parent passed away, then one's mind is so concentrated on that information, and even if someone asks you to take food or drink, you are not concentrating about this thing. Your mind is so taken away by that information, like always focusing on that matter. Like that kind of feeling is what is meant by the ascertaining the object. So if you don't have this kind of forceful attention towards the object, then no matter how much you concentrate, it is difficult to accomplish or obtain the fully qualified state of the single-pointed concentration or the calm abiding of the mind. So even if you have these two former qualities, if you lack the last qualities, the forceful attention upon the object, then you will not achieve the actual shamatha or the actual calm abiding of the mind. So if one have achieved that, if one have that kind of consciousness or that kind of mind, the calm abiding of the mind, then one can train, or one can surpass one's practice and engage into the practice of the special insight.
Tetamani Kalayani, Shimoto Sanata, Tamani Kalayani, Chato Tambani, Tia Casota, Sandon Tourist.
So, having achieved the kind of idea of the mind, then one should, try to develop or generate the analytical consciousness and try to accomplish the practice of the special insight.
What is the Tambotomani the beginning, Casota, Milapoa, Tambotomani, the Nezu, Single Madame Machimba, the Tambala Java.
So, in order to, replace your object of observation with the emptiness, first of all, you got to know what you mean by emptiness. You got to have full information about that object or that topic. Okay. As explained before, your practice of the shamatha or the calm abiding of the mind should be preceded by the introspection. So once you know the emptiness, or once you have the proper information on the emptiness, then you can just pass that object to the mindfulness, or the understanding of the emptiness to the mindfulness.
That about the Jelsatis and the Shishing the Domain music, the Tambala about the Jelsatis and the Tendala Batara, Sundam and Shishing the Charachoris, or about the Jelsati, Tata also in the Towers.
Then, after having hand over this understanding of emptiness to the mindfulness by the introspection, again, the introspection has to look upon whether the mindfulness is properly holding that object which is passed by itself or not. So since you got to know about the emptiness, so without knowing properly the emptiness, the introspection cannot hand over to the mindfulness.
And therefore,
when you talk about emptiness, there's many different levels, such as the gross level of the object of negation, and then subtle level of object of negation, and so on. So usually, to realize emptiness, there's two technical methods, such as the meditation on emptiness, or meditative equipoise upon emptiness, which is like a space, and then during the subsequent realization, looking like an illusion.
So in order
to continue the practice upon the meditation on emptiness, like the meditative equipoise upon emptiness, which is like a space, then first of all, you have to know the true level of the selflessness of the person and the selflessness of the phenomena. So, then for that, then you have to establish, the selflessness, the two levels of selflessness. So we have roughly explained in the past sessions about the selflessness of the person, and that can also be established by employing the logical reasoning known as the 4-point analysis, such as ascertaining or identifying the object of negation, and then the privation or the entailment, and then the absence of singularity and the absence of plurality.
So
when you talk about the ascertaining or identifying the object of negation, there are two levels. You've got to notice the object of negation of the object and the object of negation of the subject. So these two, Or you can also say that the object of negation of the object and object of negation of the path. In some ways is explained also in this kind of way. So in order to realize the selflessness of the person, first of all you got to know how the self-grasping attitude has clinged upon the object, or how it holds its object, or which is the misconceived self. Because usually we grasp or hold upon the object which is, which seems like existing from its own side, or from its own side and from its own right, independently, without depending upon the, the parts and particles of the basis. So that kind of appearances of the object, which is, which seems to be appearing from its own side without depending upon the conceptual thought, being labeling upon or being designated upon it, so it seems like existing from its own side concretely. That kind of object is said to be the object of negation of the object. Usually, we know that all the conventional level of phenomena, all the relative phenomena, we label as this conventional truth. So, it is labeled as if, literally means false truth. Like, in the appearances of the ignorant or the deluded mind, it believes, or that mind believes as is, it appears to that mind, but in reality, it's not like that. In reality, it is false. So literally, it is translated as a false truth. So therefore, first of all, try to identify, the object of negation, which is, which seems like, in reality, it is the mere, it's able to exist, the mere imputation given upon the basis of designation, but it still appears to our mind, or to our consciousness, that it is existing from its own side, independently and concretely. So that is this misconceived self, or the object of negation. So, for the ordinary mind, or for the ordinary being's mind, or the consciousness, whatever appears to their mind, it appears being truly existing from their own right and from their own side. So, and then, usually we are not supposed to be clinging upon the object as it appears to us, but then it still we cling upon that object as it appears to us. So that is what you meant by the self-grasping attitude. So it is said that, in all the level of our consciousness, we appear the object being existing truly from its own side, but all of them are not the self-grasping attitude. The self-grasping attitude is referred to the mind, which clings as the object appears to that mind. And only that level of mind is known as the self-grasping attitude. And for example, when you look into the mirror, you see your reflection of face as if it is existing from its own side. Truly, that kind of appearance you have, isn't it?
When you although you have that kind of appearances, like it is being existing from its own side, or truly from its own side, but in your mind you don't believe that. You say you believe that, oh, this is not true, this is false. The face cannot be in the mirror. Cannot fit in the mirror. That kind of concept is follows. So the same example follows. If you realize, or if you understand the actual meaning of the emptiness, then even if you appear all this object, existing truly from their own side, but you don't believe in it, or you don't believe, or you don't cling on that, like same like the reflection of the face in the mirror. But in our case, we appear, there is an actual existent self and the misconceived self, or the non-existent self. We appear very much kind of mixed together, in the form of mixture, and we are unable to distinguish between these two, or we are unable to identify these two. So, we do have the appearances of the actual existent self, but that is very much mixed up with the non-existent self as well. So, having understood the meaning of emptiness properly, then later, if one is undertaking the meditation known as the meditative equipoise on emptiness, which is like a space, then there one is able to distinguish, or able to identify the actual existent self and the non-existent self, or the misconceived self. So when you talk about the actual existent self, is the self merely imputed upon the valid basis of designation, and then that itself is able to perform all these conventional functions. For example, you may have heard that there's a teaching session tonight in the library, and then you develop the thought to go here or come here, and then you actually start going
and then you enter maybe in the car or in the bus, whatever transportation there are, and then you climb the steps and you enter into the door. So all these conditions has to be together for you to be with all these relative conditions, then you eventually set on the cushion, and then you listen to the teaching and you hear. Then you think that, or you say, or you think that I'm listening to the teachings, isn't it? So that self, or that I, which is listening to the teaching, doesn't exist independently from its own side, but through depending on all these relative conditions, all these different sorts of conditions, is still able to function the act of listening to the teaching, isn't it? Natural sounding down, the next house said Amjoloco, in the Malo, and the Mastonzi, to make them up on the Mal, Pajama, Passions, and Andres, I was saying, Yorba, that I'm going to another Yorma today, because the international session, Mongolia, and my Chawachi. And then when when we complete the session, then again you have the thought that the teaching session is completed, and then you have the thought to return back, and you actually stand up, and then walk, to the door, and then we step down. So although that self or that I, which wishes to go back or return back, doesn't exist independently and inherently from its own side and from its own right, but it's still able to perform all these functions of going and coming, so on. And the must be the phone, the pata can intend the better. Then the focus in the nice hours of your mother, Rangon to a magic, showing young other one other tea, so your mother's drawing your mother. Therefore, it is depending upon this relative conditions, the relativity, depending upon that, that condition, then, one is, able to perform all these functions, such as coming to listening to the teachings and returning back after completing the teachings and so on. Despite of this, the self of the I, which is listening to the teaching, does not exist independently and inherently, even at a tiny like an atom. It's same like the example of the the mirror. Like you can when you look into the mirror, you can have the reflection of your face in the mirror. That face in the mirror is not actual face, but it's still depending upon that mirror. You are able to remove all the faults and dirts that you have on your face, isn't it? So, although the actual face is not in the mirror, but depending upon that condition, one is able to eliminate the faults and dirts on the face, isn't it? One is able to perform that function, isn't it? So, likewise, whatever phenomena that is existent, does not have, concrete and independent existence, but is still able to, perform all these relative functions. But then, for us, like, for our concept or consciousness, these objects or this existence being independent and concrete from their own side and from their own right. It's more or less like looking into the mirror, and you have the reflection of your face in the mirror, and believing that that face is the real face, is more or less same like that. There's one story that once Snow Line is looking into the big pond or the ocean, and then he sees, or it sees the reflection in the ocean that very fearful animal is looking to him, from the ocean. So to overcome that, the Sonoran actually jump into the water mostly. So same case with what has been exemplified. Then in our case, the self of the I doesn't exist inherently and independent from its own side and from its own right, but yet we cling and grasp on that object, and we are jumping into the ocean of the cycle of existence. So, I've roughly explained, how the, self-grasping attitude grasp at the self. So, as I've explained in the past, how the self-grasping attitude grasps at such a self for the I, which is being, existing, from his own side and from his own right, so solidly and concretely, and that is the what's known as the misconceived self or the object of negation. So, while clinging so forcefully, so strongly at such a misconceived self or the object, then we should employ another level of consciousness to investigate how the self-grasping attitude is clinging into it is misconceived object, or that the self, this concrete self, and then investigate. Otherwise, without doing that, if you just happen to be analyzing, here and there, without having that such a forceful grasping attitude at the misconceived object, then it doesn't harm to the point, or it doesn't help to eliminate the object of negation. So, for some, they, like some tradition, maybe they give this kind of example that the mirror itself, or the mirror is empty of face. The mirror is lack of face. So, like similar way, one is oneself is empty of oneself. That kind of theory is considered to be the right view. In some system you can find as well. So, if in reality, if empty of oneself, oneself being empty of oneself is the emptiness, then that means one is non-existent. Like one is more or less one becomes non-existent, and that doesn't fulfill the understanding of right view either. So if one does not investigate properly, what I mean by the right view, then there's a lot of risk there, because like some system they express that the mirror empty of reflection is, they take an example of the illusion, and then same like the oneself being empty of oneself is the emptiness. So if one were to employ such a theory, and there's that may lead to the wrong understanding of the right view.
도시하다 나가 보게 하는 가서 추가해 봐. 저는 이번 도시인가? 등등 좀 하시지만 아니 다 가정이 됐나 수도 하는 거 어떤 요령을 주다 가서 판거든. 저는 난 말씀드린 요령 하나 본보다 주도 요당하면 다들 요거라 요는 요래 쉬고 주다 가는 요거 말이야.
So, having, identified the proper or the actual, object of negation, then one should investigate because itself is actually existent. If it is existent, then it should exist either, one with the aggregates or separate from the aggregates. There's no third way for such a misconceived self or for such an object of negation to be existent.
오늘 다가나서 봤던 저는 지금 나도 요나 본보다 주도 하는 본보다 다들 요는 막 공단 온도다. 다 되려고 나도 본보다 주도 요나
So when one is analyzing that the misconceived self or the I, which is grasped by the eye-grasping attitude, if that misconceived self is existing one with the five aggregate.
다 본보다 주도 요는 알아서 본보다 여러 강간을 아니가 여러.
So if that I or the self is existing one with the five aggregate, that if there are five aggregates, there should be five eyes. So this kind of falls also arise.
Then
then there's also the false that one, the eye is only one, and that the five aggregate should be coming one, that's one aggregate, and that kind of false also follows. So then when one investigates in this kind of way that the misconceived self or the I doesn't exist one with the five aggregate, it doesn't exist inherently one with the five aggregate, and also doesn't exist inherently separate from the five aggregate. That's how you understand the second point, the ascertaining the privation or the entailment. Next follows the third point, is the absence of the, absence of singularity, because, the object doesn't truly exist with the one or as one, because, in order for the object to exist, to be able to exist, has to depend on so many other causes and conditions.
So,
the example is that, for example, either the object or the person doesn't exist truly as one, because it depends, or that depends on many other parts and particles. And also a person doesn't exist truly as many or in a plural form, because you don't have one. First, without having one or the singular, you can't have many or the plural. For example, same like the chariot, you have the chariot, all the collections of the parts and particles of the chariot is not chariot, And then separating each part is also not the chariot. With the collections of all these different parts and particles, the wheels and so on, that object is able to perform the function of the chariot. So that function is what you call a chariot.
What about the Matable? 당신이 그만 신치기 또 만나서는 제가 그래서 되겠다. what 뮤직자가 제가 가야만 맞았던 동생을
as explained before, that when the self-grasping attitude is very forceful and clinging strongly on its misconceived object or self, and when you employ another level of consciousness to investigate or analyze, then employing this 4-point analysis, then at the conclusion you will have the experience of empty or experience of the emptiness. So once one have that kind of experience, then one also develop very strong sense of fear that oneself, oneself being completely lost. That kind of feeling is also generated.
원래 비슷한 주로 저런 생각은 다 뒤뒤도 가서라다. 어떤 나방가라 인도 나방데 또 동안에 제가 원래도 사탄 라성시만 하는 성시만 한 동안 공부를 주고.
So in the past the place known as the Sera Chede, where Lama Tsongkhapa is giving a discourse on the right view, and then there's this one disciple called Nartangpa. He was right away contemplating on the topic, and then he more or less realized emptiness, and he generated a strong sense of fear that he himself being lost. And he happened to be touching on the color of his cloth or his robes. And then Lama Tsongkhapa realized that one of his disciples realized the right view, and then he said that right away. He said that this Nartangpa, the one from Nartang, left conventional truth on the color of the tongue or on the collar.
가래서는 라고는 기반으로 딱 내렸던 것도 사실 이는 라고가 나도 지가 인상고 저 생각이 기억하시면 인상한테 나중에 내가 매매지 하고가 루디스요.
Because the reason is that he realized that he realized the empty of the lack of inherent existent I, and then he developed a strong sense of fear, and right away he touched, and he still found the conventional level of the eye, which is, still able to perform all these functions.
어두웠어요. 다 그냥 되게 다 동산도 신상도 동산 대응으로 동산 되는 거는 동산에 가려서는 대마도 바꿔가 있는 동산도 치마라.
So when one have that kind of appearances of, or the feeling of the emptiness, that is the emptiness mere negation of the true existence.
다 동산 되는 아니들 가서라다. 그게 라고는 되게 라고는 되게 도전 내는데 무엇이 강조가 되고 그러죠.
And then on top of that experience of the emptiness, then one has to develop or generate a strong ascertainment of being lack of inherent existence.
어떤 라고는 되게 민도인데 무엇이 대단한데 동안 우리 민도로 중국이거나 공부를.
So one has to combine these 2 points: the experience of emptiness and being lack of existence from his own right and from his own side. With combination, then one has to carry on the meditation. So then that object, then you pass or you hand over to the concentration you have formally achieved or you have formally developed. And then once you hand over this object of observation to that calm abiding of the mind or the shamatha, then you still have to continue the experience of emptiness and then the ascertainment of the lack of inherent existence.
미시드 매바 제 동바 타가란 때는 편도고요 말이야. 나리한테 신경 것들은 신방만에 제바 자친구 맞아봐. 제바 충소 충대체네. 나리한 제도도 장방에 신수창으로.
So, if you just have the empty appearances and don't have, the ascertainment of the lack of inherent existence, it doesn't help again, because, after having hand over that object, the observation to the calm abiding of the mind, then you still have to, investigate, or you still have to investigate and generate the consciousness of the investigation.
미시드 민도이 미시드 보고도 sab면은 동바 전간에 동이 보고요 말.
So if you don't have the ascertainment of the lack of, resistance, then even if you contemplate or concentrate on that emptiness or the empty appearances, doesn't fulfill the meditation on emptiness.
라시게 보면 근데 미시드 발라 한 동반이야 동상이 되게 등주는 거 공부하시나 안에 가야 이름에서 봐. 가야 이름에서 봐. 다와도 그거를.
So, without having that ascertainment of the lack of inherent existence and thus concentrating on the empty appearances or the empty feeling, then that doesn't fulfill the meditation on emptiness. It becomes what is known as the non-conscious of any object, or non-conscious of any object of the observation.
제가 인터넷 지안을 이러면 집에 겁나 지마야 아니요. 동네간이야 개발이야. 내가 그러면 한테 달라들어야 프렌도요 말았어.
So if one were to contemplate or concentrate on such an object, that only leads you to take rebirth in the formless realms, that does not become causes for the attainment of the liberation.
나중에 제거는 조건이 뭐지? 동네 제거는 조건이 빼면서는 많은 공부를 시작하고.
So during the practice or meditation on emptiness, then you have to combine the contemplative meditation and then the analytical meditation together.
다른 식의 동안에 다뭐 강사가 되느냐 강사가 된도 근데 가서를 강사가 다음에 되나 봐. 되는 방법 등도는 저도 다음에 되나 봐.
So firstly, you establish the selflessness of the person on the basis of the person, and then followed by, then you have to establish the selflessness of the phenomena on the basis of the aggregate.
강사가 다음에 또 사선도 심을 내려버려요. 제가 안되는 이거 봉고등이야. 뒤지 전부를 또 먹어봐. 그 봉고를 쓴 것도 비가네. 다 고소. 내려보시는 바는 또 되게요.
So once you realize the selflessness of the person, then to realize selflessness of the phenomena is not that difficult, and you don't have to employ that many logical reasons to establish.
나한테는 뒤져서 줘야 돼. 아니 바쁘다가 바쁘다면서 나오는 거 봤다는 거.
Likewise, then same logical process you can use upon the compositional